Thank you, boys, for coming here on board, mate, after a big day yesterday.
Welcome, brother. It's a pleasure to be here. And, a little bit tired after yesterday. But, again, it's nice to be here and have a chat.
Yeah, man. I've been emotionally drained from yesterday as well, man. And when I say emotionally drained, not in a negative way, man, because it was all positive yesterday, the event. But, fuck, man, I have a lot to process. I've still got a lot to process. A lot come up, man, and I'm probably going to share a lot of it. I didn't really share too much in the circle afterwards because I was really processing it then, but I think I've got a little bit to share today, and more about just asking some questions of what went on and what I went through as well. Probably give us a good opportunity to sort of discuss, some of the integration and after the event. But before we get into what you do, Wa. I mean, a lot of these questions, we just had Marc jump on board at the last minute, man. We sort of went from a group discussion to just being me and Wa, and then we thought Marc's got a few nerves to
navigate through. Yeah. What better place to do it?
Yeah. Thanks for coming on, brother. Thanks for both of you coming on, man.
Super grateful to be
here. Yeah. So before we get into, like the movement that you boys are doing with Amend, which is fucking awesome, by the way, man. I've been watching it from a distance, and it's such a pleasure and an honour to have you on board, bro. What you're doing, what you boys are doing, man, and what other people are doing, like Al, and it's fucking awesome, man, and it's what's needed more and more for men's mental health. And for my platform, man, I'm truly grateful to have you boys on board to share some of this and hopefully, reach more people that are in a look for a better life, man, better mental health.
Yeah, fucking oath, bro. We run workshops, we run online programs, and there's other platforms like podcasts. We're doing the exact same work. It's just on a different forum. So, thank you for, acknowledging the work we do, and the acknowledgement comes straight back to you, brother.
Yeah, cheers, bro. Cheers. Well, so before we get into all of that, look, it sounds to me you've lived a full life, been brought up in New Zealand, been a young father, balancing family life, also being young, trying to work out how to be a dad and run a family, right up to where you are now, man. And the journey, I'd just like to know a little bit more about yourself, like right from the beginning, so everyone gets to know you that's listening, and just to how and why you are where you're at the moment, bro.
Yes, sweet. I'll try to sum it up in a few moments. So grew up in New Zealand, in a household that involved a lot of chaos. There was lots of violence as well. There was also lots of love, and I'd like to always acknowledge that now. My old man sorted most things out with his fists, and if they weren't with his fists, then there was lots of... he's got a very powerful energy, and we knew when we should shut our mouths and do as we were told. At 15, I decided I want to move out. Met a girl, and she fell pregnant. We were both 15 years old, and
wow.
we had a son who was born with retinoblastoma, which is cancer in your eyes and brain. He had his right eye removed to save his life when he was 3 weeks old, and then we embarked on a journey of chemotherapy. He's now an amazing young man who's nearly 20 years old and lives a full life, and he's actually an inspiration of mine because of the way he chooses to live life. My daughter is 18 years old, and when she was 11 years old, she was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, and that was really difficult for me as her dad to help her to navigate through that. There's a couple of times that she's ended up in hospital and she said, "I'm sick of this, I'm over it, Dad, I don't want to do it anymore." Myself, I found myself in the cancer ward of the Gold Coast Hospital when I was 20 years old, needing a bone marrow transplant. My sisters, or brother, were not a bone marrow match, so I went through treatment myself. And it was in that experience, now upon reflection a few years ago, that I realised how powerful our minds are. All the professionals or specialists of what I was navigating that experience and still do today were telling me I should do A, B and C, and that I may not live, and if I did live, that this is what my life's now going to look like. And I was so against that and chose the life, and I still choose the life I'm going to live today. And I've deemed right because everything they told me was incorrect.
And is this where this all stems from, in terms of running these workshops and opening up the minds of, well, I'm going to say males, but there's obviously the female aspect to Amend as well, man. I want to acknowledge that. Is that what sort of set you down that path?
Yeah, I would say all of it plays a part, 100%. Where I was actually clear on my pathway was relationship breakups. You know, I remember one specific relationship breakup where I was pretty down to the point where I didn't want to be here anymore. And I vowed to myself in that moment that I'd work out who I was, and I wanted to know that on a really deep level. Why? Because I don't want to experience this pain anymore. So I would say that was the moment that I truly stepped into the work and to discover who I was. And the more I learned, I was like, fuck, more people, in particular men, need to know about what I'm learning. Yeah, I can relate to that, man. I mean, this is where I've got to as well with the podcast. I sort of just had the opportunity to start again, man. I hit rock bottom, and I also, you know, and understanding mental health, you know, I need to dive into my story, but basically just understanding that there's so much work to be done, but there's so much out there as well that can help. And I just wanted to shine light on all these areas because, fuck, sometimes when you're in those dark places, man, it's very hard to see beyond that, you know. And I just wanted to open up a platform of interviewing people like yourself, or offer support or inspiring stories that you know, help navigate through those darker times, man, when you're in those situations, you know. Yeah, I've had a few conversations with my mates over the years, and you know, the handful of times that I felt like I didn't want to be here anymore, ultimately it was like a 30 to 60 second black spot where you truly didn't want to be here. And it's like, if you can just get through that 30 to 60 seconds, yes, it still feels shit on either side of that, but it's like there's still a glimmer of hope. So it's like presenting a message somewhere or a platform about how we can show people that, you know, in that 30 to 60 second block, you know, how can we teach people that there is still hope? Because we can get them through that, there'll be a lot more people that are still here on earth with us.
For sure, man. And I guess this is where some of this work gets, you know, into place, you know, that you guys share, and it's trying to get, you know, I'm going to refer to it as an anchor, you know. I mean, you keep having these 60-second windows of where you're feeling suicidal, or, you know, maybe it doesn't get that bad, but you certainly feel fucking just rat shit, you know. And I think a lot of the time is having a reflection. I mean, you spoke about showing up late. You know, we're 3 minutes late, and you know, you shed the importance of that, and where does that show up in the rest of your life? Yeah, you might be 3 minutes late here, big deal, but that 3 minutes can turn into a week or 2 months, or, you know, it can mean a lot of things. But what does it mean to your life? You know, how does that show up into your life when you're always late? And I guess sometimes when you're in those dark spots, you've got to look at it. Okay, well, why is this always happening?
Yeah, well, we all run on patterns, bro. You know, thought patterns, behaviour patterns, feeling patterns. And when we get really clear on those patterns, we get to ask ourselves, you know, a really powerful question: are these patterns serving me, or are they not serving me? And if they are, amazing, let's build on them. If they're not, fuck, let's get to the core of where they come from so that we can navigate and let them go and create new patterns that are serving us. And what we explored yesterday around time, yes, people might have been 3 minutes late, but, you know, that like you said, 3 minutes could be 3 weeks out in life. And in those 3 weeks, what opportunities are we missing that have not helped us step into our fullest potential, and therefore we're always finding ourselves in lack. And the longer we stay in lack, it's like, oh, I feel more shit, and then the internal dialogue turns into, I'm not enough, I'm not good enough. And that stays around long enough, it's like, oh, now I'm at a suicidal point.
Yeah, man. Fuck yeah. And it's just those little things that were discussed yesterday, man, in the event, where it just resonates with you, you know. Mark, what's your story, brother? How did you get onto this journey, brother?
That's actually a beautiful story, and every time I speak about it, there is more that I reflect on now, and I'm able to look back and see the beauty in it. So upbringing, separated parents, I took a lot of negative away from that. I never received the love from both my parents that I desired, which then obviously brought me to where I was. I had parents that worked a lot, tried to provide for what they thought I needed in life, but what I truly needed was that love and connection. And in my older years, that's where it played out into drug addiction, sex addiction, porn addiction, trying to find that and fill that void, which also took me to a lot of self-worth and everything like that. I did get bullied a lot through high school, which caused me to disconnect and I guess finally escape, which is where the drugs come into play. So it took for me to lose my best mate to get on the drugs, didn't know what to do. There was a lot of suicide patterns there. But then when I got involved into the drug scene and everything like that, I spiraled very quickly. And then I was surrounded by a lot of suicide, and a lot of suicidal thoughts come into play. There was a couple of times I tried to overdose, not wanting to be here, but every time that I got to that point, there was something there that it was like a nudge that kept saying there was more for me in life, but I just didn't know what. So fast forward a bit, I met a partner. We had a beautiful daughter. She's now 7, and then I had a son, and he's now 5. Cool. And when that happened, I was holding him, and I looked at him, and I'm like, how the fuck can I teach him to be a male when I'm not a male? Like, I'm not a man myself. And it brought up a lot of self-worth and all that kicked into play. And then I was sent a video with Wa and the boys, and it was about the workshop with the walk and whatnot. So I reached out to my best mate. I said, hey, bro, look, I'd really love for you to come here and experience this with me, thinking that he would say no, because I had it pretty much planned that if that didn't work, that was my life done. So I went to that and literally thought nothing of it, went with no expectations. As soon as I spoke, I burst into tears. There was about 60 males there. And I looked around and I was just like, I've got nothing else. So I just surrendered to the process. And what I received from that day was a lot. But at the same time, that's where I didn't do the aftercare. So within, I think it was about 6 months, I'd pretty much gone back down the rabbit hole of working too much to try and provide for my family, but then being disconnected, thinking that money was the key to fill the love. And that's when I connected with Wa and reached out about the Warrior program. I jumped in the Warrior program. And then my relationship wasn't in a good way. So my partner had left me. It was beautiful because I was so proud of her for doing so, because I wouldn't have stayed in that myself. And with her leaving, gave me the opportunity to lean into myself. And with doing so, that's when I did, I think, another program. And off the back of that one was I set a goal to myself to quit my job, because I knew that was where a lot of my problems were, was working and money and control. So I surrendered to the process. 3 months, I think, went by, and I just allowed what would be. I created my own company. Fast forward to where we are, it's nearly 3 years down. I've got an employee about to put in my second. And yeah, absolutely love it. Love every moment of it.
Fuck yeah, man. Thanks for being on here, Rudder. There's a good story.
Yeah,
Fuck, there's a lot to talk about there, though, man. I like how you mentioned there, because this conversation comes up a lot between males, of like how they just lose themselves in a relationship. When the relationship's toxic or shit, and I'll put my hand up, man, I've been here, and how we cling on to it as males, as if like it's our fucking life support, you know, and but when you've sort of gone through the breakup, you've gone through the processes, especially if you've learnt in that period and growing, and then you look back and just go, fuck, man, I'm glad that happened, you know. So for you to sort of recognise that earlier in the piece rather than later in it, I mean, that's awesome. And I think that's the sort of message that you want to try and get across to some of these boys, is like, if something's, you got to let go of it, and the more you surrender to it, that's what I mean. When you're in a relationship where neither of you are happy, realistically, like as I said, if you're not number one, your kids get number 3. So I was angry at the kids all the time. I didn't know how to be around because I wasn't around very often. So when they were young, I just didn't know what to do when they would cry, when they would scream. And in the position I'm in now, it's beautiful, because every time I get to see them, I'm actually present with them. And there's still a lot that I'm navigating through with that and with my current relationship, but I love every moment of it. And there is still a few big moments that I have in my previous relationship now, which is beautiful, because it shows that there's always work to do. Yeah, and I think, I agree with that. It's ongoing. I know that with my walk into this new growth, and I've only really been doing this for 3 years, and although the more you get hungry for more and more, you know, especially when you've done a workshop like yesterday, you're just looking for the next one, because it's good and to feel that growth. But I also feel like when you grow more, that you also it's hard work, man, because you're starting to see down other avenues that you have, or things come up that you haven't dealt with, or you didn't know it was there, and your perspective. Like, I look back at some of my childhood, man, and just go, what the fuck? You know, it was almost like I was okay with it until I knew that it was wrong. Does that make sense?
It does, but also at the same time, you wouldn't be where you are right now if you didn't go through that situation.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
And we don't realise that it wasn't okay because it was so normal for us.
That's right. Yeah.
So until that comes into our awareness, it's like, oh, that was normal. And then all this new awareness comes up, like, oh, fuck, that actually wasn't normal.
Yeah, that's right.
And that definitely played up for me in my reflection of my life. It was just so normalised. You know, I watched all my aunties and uncles' families doing the exact same things we were doing. So I was like, oh. And it still shows up every now and then. I'm like, fuck, okay, that wasn't okay.
Yeah. And I think when you realise that, for me, it was, fuck, what have I've been believing this lie this whole time, you know? And then I started questioning. There was times where I questioned, well, what is right or wrong? Like, I thought that was right. Now I'm seeing this is right. Well, then what about the rest of my fucking life?
Yeah. I reckon there's a really cool place, and this is something that I still navigate. It's just to sit in neutral. And what I mean by is, like, nothing is right or wrong, it just is. And when something just is, it helps me to stay really grounded and really aware so that I can stay on my path of life instead of making things right or wrong and taking me down rabbit holes that are not for me.
Yeah. And I like that yesterday when you shared, or correct me if you're wrong, if I'm wrong, but, you know, you're talking about being still. And by being still, you know, opens up other paths to be, or maybe you want to explain it a little bit more, but...
Yeah, I guess how we would language it today is, you know, the rat race. You know, society and what is deemed success. You know, it has a lot of people living life at speed, and when we're living at such speed, we're missing quite a lot of what's going on internally for us. And like I just said, we end up down rabbit holes that are not for us. So when we're able to catch that and slow and actually be still, you know, sometimes for a lot of us that's really uncomfortable. These emotions that the busyness is masking can then have space to come through, and when they come through, we get to process, and two, we get to really learn about ourselves.
Yeah. Just on that note, when something is bubbling up inside of its, you know, and you're feeling something and emotions coming up, what do you do? Well, what do you boys do when... I hope I'm explaining myself right here, but like you can sort of feel something's bottling up. You don't quite know what it is, but you know something needs to be released. Is there something that when you're sitting at home, like what is there any particular thing that you guys do, if it's breath work or meditation or something like that, where helps you navigate through what's going on in your mind? And
Yeah, absolutely, bro. I would say feel it. And it's easy for me to say that now because I've practiced it for so many years that it's so automatic for me now. However, you know, years ago, that wasn't it wasn't automatic for me at all. It was actually against everything that I believed. So you have to put in practices that are going to help you to learn that it's okay to feel, and practice those so much that they go from practices to embodiment, so that you can learn to feel. Because we as humans, if we can be processing machines of feelings, we're fucking nailed life. Because when I can process and feel through the emotions in this present experience, I then get to experience the next experience in full, as opposed to being stuck back in here in this past experience where I didn't quite process the emotions that were connected to it.
It's crazy that come up, man, because that was my experience throughout the whole journey, the 9D breathwork yesterday, man. It was, I've had this, it's been going on for a while, man. I'll fill you in on the story without boring you too much. But so I found my mum dead through suicide at the age of 14. And I have, that's a fine, by the way. Nah. The phone's ringing. So, yeah, and man, I've just had I've suppressed my feelings. I never really knew it, man, but with alcohol's been my main substance that I've abused. But just even with work, and I've ran an empire of a business which I've lost. Obviously, I was always going to lose it, but you know, I've lost that. But like drugs and just keeping myself busy and occupied, and it's only just it only started coming up about a couple of months ago where I've gone sober. You know, completely sober. I was practicing just only a couple of beers was okay. But then the odd occasion would come up where I've just abused it and I've fallen back into an old pattern. Then I've just gone, fuck, I'm just no good, even if just a couple of beers, you know. So I've gone completely sober, and then all these feelings are starting to come up. And my mum's anniversary of her death was Sunday just gone. But leading up to that, I didn't realise that the date was coming up. But I woke up a Thursday morning and I was just feeling absolute shit. Couldn't get out of bed, just depressed. I didn't know what it was. That's what I was talking about before. I could feel something that was bottling up. A good friend of mine over here has been on the podcast a few times, Luke. He does sound healing and cacao. And I just reached out to him, and I just said, fuck, this is how I'm feeling. And more or less, he just said, I've got your bro B here at 1 o'clock today. We're going to do some work. And the whole day I'm like, what the fuck am I going to get myself into here, man? You know, completely out of my comfort zone. But again, I was like, Dave, you've got to practice what you preach, bro. You're putting all this on your podcast and talking about it. Just get to Luke and worry about the rest once you're there, you know. So anyway, it just come up, man, like just feeling like, and it was like my mum was talking to me, or the universe, or I had a female just going, David, feel. It's time to feel. You haven't felt like anxiety or whatever's going on. I just want you to feel an emotion, feel love. And so all that was coming up. So I've had that on my mind for like the last couple of weeks now, of just feeling, like I want to feel all these different emotions, and realising that I have just suppressed them this whole time. And I didn't know it until, or you know, I say this a lot as well, you don't know until you know. And anyway, so yeah, that whole sound healing, it was amazing. It was awesome. And that was about a week ago. And then I've gone into Amend, and we've done this 9D breath work, and fuck me, man, it was just, it just highlighted it even more. Yeah. That to feel, man, like to feel. And I just went through all my childhood, man, of, you know, why I suppressed all these feelings. And what come up, man, I've just been scared to feel. Feeling hurts, man. Feeling, and the way I've been brought up and the things I've seen, I don't want to fucking feel. So I'm going to find anything as a distraction to fucking suppress that, because, you know, it's been hard to feel. Yeah. But then it went through, then it sort of showed me through that journey of like, you know, the things that I've lost through not feeling. And a lot of it comes back to, you know, past relationships and not being present, you know, and yeah. Yeah.
And something that was coming out for me as you were sharing that, Brian, thank you for sharing that. It's like it hurts to feel, and you also touched on it but didn't quite say it, as like, and it also hurts not to feel. Because like, how much do we lose and how much do we fuck up in our lives when we choose not to feel and suppress? Because it comes out one way or another. You know, there's the ones that we suppress for a lot of men. It comes out in the way of fucking really shitty words or sometimes shitty actions, you know, with our fists. So, you know, the people that, you know, want to do the work or go to a breathwork session are a bit afraid of doing that because they're scared of what's going to come up. It's like, bro, that's coming up anyway. Yeah. You just aren't seeing it. And when you step into that space that you're afraid of, you will then learn more about yourself, so you have control of what's going on internally. You can choose what's going on, what happens externally.
And what do you call it, bro, when we're in like the 9D breathwork? We're in our subconscious.
Yeah, well, it helps us we lower our frequency and tap into our subconscious mind. Yeah. And our subconscious mind chooses 95% of our life. Yeah. So consciousness is really beautiful, but it's like, well, 95% of what has been chosen for us is from our subconscious mind, which is like a machine. You know, the age of 7 is like the machine gets switched on and it runs automatically. So it's whatever's programmed into us or into that subconscious mind in the first 7 years is what's running automatically through the machine. So it's super important for us to start processing what's going on there, and then implementing and putting in programming it there we want to be chosen for us and what we want our life to look like, as opposed to what happens for most humans. You know, the programming comes from our culture and comes from our environment and definitely comes from our parents. Yeah.
I sort of feel when you're in that subconscious mind, everything makes sense. It's like the clarity. Well, I felt that yesterday, you know, like even though it was really hard what I went through yesterday, like I mean, I pretty much relived finding my mum through suicide again. I relived all those things, almost like what my kids have seen, all the destructive behaviours that I've done in the previous years, because we were getting rid of all that guilt and shame. So I felt like I had to relive it to let go of it, if that makes sense. But
can I quickly touch on that?
Yeah.
I love that you got to relive those experiences yesterday. And why I love that you got to relive those experiences is because there were, and I'm assuming there were, incomplete emotional processes when the actual event played out. So the fact that yesterday you went back to relive them, you had the opportunity to process those last parts, and so you can truly let go and create space within. And now you have space within to put in what you want in your life.
Yeah, man. I felt like I processed them yesterday, and which brings me on to one of my discussions I want to have with you guys, and that's about the transformation. And it sort of feels, again, when you're going down this path, or you're getting rid of old habits, or you're starting a new life, but it's the transformation and sort of accepting this is the new you. And we spoke about it even with the healthy ego and the negative ego, but also, like, from what I went through yesterday, it sort of seems surreal in a lot of ways, but to also just the transformation that I've gone through is to accept it and to try and learn to live with it now that things are gone. I mean, do you guys, Mark, I don't know, is there something you can share on the transformation and I guess is the word integrating the new experience into your new life,
It's actually beautiful that you mentioned that, because this is something I've been speaking a while about the past few weeks. That's where I'm at the moment, is letting go of the old to create room for the new. Exactly like me being here right now. This is bringing up, I'd say not a lot. There was at the start. There was a lot of emotion coming up with even me sitting here on camera talking, having a conversation with you. But if none of that was here, I'd be perfectly normal. And as you're saying with that, to sort of let go, like, I feel from my experience with me, it was okay not to so much let go, to actually love on that part of me that was there, to love on what I'd been through and where I've been through, and take it easy. And like you're talking about with what you've done in the last week, pretty much, and how much you've been through, that's a lot. And that's a lot to take on. And you can still see that there is a lot there for you. And you can see that right now in this conversation. And that's okay. And man, just be gentle with yourself, love on yourself, and love every part of it. Because as Wa said, now you're getting to relive it and feel those emotions that we are taught to suppress. Us as males especially is don't feel it, move on, suppress and walk away. But now to be able to bring that up, you're allowing room, as Wa said, to create room for the new and to accept where you're going and what you want in your life.
Yeah. I like that, man, because even when that going back to feeling, it's like now I'm excited to feel, It's almost like I want it straight away and I can't do it. It's like there's still something there in the blockage. But I guess that's part of the process and the transition into the new me, is that you need to slowly navigate through all these things and work out what the barriers. But like I want it, like there's more of a want. I've never had that want before, So
How cool is that, bro?
Yeah.
Like the fact, these emotions and there's these feelings we once used to be afraid of, and now we're like inviting them in. And it's like, that's when the work becomes fun. And I mentioned it yesterday in the work. We had a beautiful man with us who's done a lot of work, and he was playing in the space yesterday. And he was really excited about all the things that were coming out for him. And I'm so grateful that he was there, because there's lots of newbies to the work in the room. And he was exempling that the work can also be fun. It doesn't always have to be heavy and full of tears and trauma. It can be full of joy and happiness and play as well. And I feel like what you're expressing right now is like, oh, the bro's about to start playing in this space of the work now. And that's fucking really cool when we get to that. Yeah,
for sure. And I guess that's when I was talking out there, like it was my second time doing 90 breathwork. So I wanted to take it a little bit further and deeper breaths and bringing it on, and also releasing all that. Man, it felt good to just release it, And another good point, man, is that I feel getting people to these events is harder than, like, after the event, I think, like, fuck, I just want to go and preach to the whole fucking world. Just get into one of these guys. Amend, wherever they are, fly there, fucking book in, do it, and because you're so excited and everyone gets something out of it, man, regardless, but it's just hard to get people to go through those doors. And I think there's also people out there that feel that you need to have a dramatic trauma to enter into these events as well.
Yeah. Bro, it is
more of a message to those that are listening, you know, like what's your perspective on it?
Well, it's fact. It's fact. And this is something that I've been having conversations with a good friend of mine over in Sydney with. And, you know, and it's maybe a message for us too, the people that are preaching the message, because listen to how we all talk about it. Oh, it's so hard and it's difficult and it's scary to be in that room. It's like, oh, can we start reframing the language that we're using to be more inviting for those men to come into the room, as opposed to talking about the tough and difficult parts of that space that we're wanting them to be in, because we're so excited of what we received when we stepped into it. And then again, we come back to, I guess, reality of like, fuck, we were once them, we were like, fuck that. But the more and more of us men that step in and normalise this, the more powerful we're going to become, the more it's going to expand, until that, you know, there will be a time where it's so normalised and it's like, fuck, cool, we don't need to go to workshops now because we all sit around the table and have these conversations, and then our sons and their sons and their sons are doing the same thing just so naturally, and not having to fucking make this big workshop thing.
I think it's closer than we think too. Well, for me it is. Yeah, I mean, I know with all the events I go to, and the way I look at it, I just look at it, we're all just collectively doing our own little part to make it normal.
And you know the coolest thing, bro, and I'm not taking away from the softer men because they're just as beautiful and just as powerful as we are, but we've got these big, burly, strong, what the society deems strong men now stepping into the work. You know, we've got brothers up in that room of fucking ex-gang members, big, tough looking dudes that society would look at and go, fuck. But they're stepping in, and the way they speak and the language that they're using, that's what's going to reframe this difficult to get people into the room to it's just now normalised.
Yeah, for sure. And even having the older generation in there too, you know, there's a few discussions of how they sort of congratulated all the young boys being in there, and they talk a lot about, oh man, I wish we had this when we were younger. I guess it was always there, this sort of work, but it just wasn't as accessible, is it? Maybe? I don't know. Like, what's your thoughts about that? Because I felt like just saying to some of these older boys, well, like, you're here now. Your journey's just begun, and celebrate that. But I guess, like, you know, if you're 25 going through this, would have been a lot better, you know, especially with some of the trauma that they needed to release, or guilt and shame. And
Well, see, with that one as well, social media, it's a beautiful tool if we can use it to our advantage. You know what I mean? That's how I come across them, and that's how I've come across a lot of the work that I've done. So you got to remember, back in the day, they didn't really have anything like that. It was really, everything was only around the corner, or you could only go so far. Whereas now, like, as we said, we try and normalise this. You see it, bro. Like, you saw it yesterday. When everyone comes into the room, you can see the scare and the fear and everything. But within 5-10 minutes of everyone connecting and everyone shares, that's when you realise, oh, wait a minute, like, there's such a beautiful energy here. We're all on the same path. And then allowing that to happen for, how many were there, 26 men yesterday? You know, they go home, they take that to their family, they take that to their mates. Then, you know, then it'll reach out. And now there is so much there. Whereas, as the older boys do say, and they say it a lot, like they said to us yesterday, how proud of they are. And I truly believe, like, from speaking to my old man and everything like that, that there was nothing around because everyone was in that fight and flight and protect and provide. Whereas times are changing.
Yeah. How exciting though, man, that we're all waking up to all this, man. It's pretty cool, and it's exciting, man. I got home last night and just hugged the fuck out of my son, you know. And I've always, and this is one thing that keep coming up through the event yesterday was I just, you know, a few of the cries that I had was just like how blessed I am that I am that father now to my son. I get to hold him. I get to teach him. I get to teach him all this new stuff that I'm learning, and appreciation and gratitude, and, you know, and he practices it, man. And you see him, he's only 8 years old, you know, and you see him do it all the time. His prayers are gratitude, you know, all the good things that happened today, and, you know, what he's thankful for, and you see him, you know, and it is, and that's what all the emotions come up, you know, particularly because there was a lot of people in that workshop yesterday that have missed out on all that, or haven't had the opportunity, you know, and we witnessed a few of the boys to be connected with their father and having their father there, which was fucking electric, man, to you know, to witness.
Yeah. father-son always gets a room, bro.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's feedback for us that there's so much father-son wounds out there in society and in the world. But every single time we have a task or create a task on the spot for father-sons, there's not a dry eye in that room because it fucking lands and resonates with all the men in the room on a personal level.
Yeah.
Like it did yesterday.
Yeah, for sure. And that's one thing I'd like for those who are listening, may you guys make it comfortable. You know, of course those nerves are there walking into it. It's all mainly the unknown, really. But yeah, it's pretty quickly where you work out you're in a safe place, very quickly.
Yeah, that's our focus before anything is safety, a foundation of safety, because if people don't feel safe, they ain't going to tap internally. They're not going to go inside and explore themselves. So that's our number one focus. And, you know, we always work on authenticity. If in that moment or at that workshop I'm really struggling, I'm not going to stand at the front and bullshit and say, oh, I've got everything together. No, right now I'm fucking navigating through not being the best dad, or my relationship is not the best at the moment. And there'll be other workshops, you know, a year's time is like, fuck, my relationship's absolutely amazing. But we're really big on authenticity and not fucking bullshitting, because energy never lies and people will pick up on bullshit.
Yeah, yeah. Keeping it fucking real.
Yeah.
Well, it is. I mean, it's so true. I mean, you can pick up on that straight away too. If you're just bullshitting, I mean, fuck, you're not going to get the same results out of it, are you?
Yeah, I mean, humans in general can read energy, and people that have had, and it's the demographic of people that we call them, very traumatised childhoods, they're hyper vigilant to energy because they learnt that as a really young kid, that I need to be hyper vigilant of my surroundings and energy to keep myself safe. So more so than any rooms, our rooms are super vigilant of energy. Yeah,
yeah. And just a few of the things we went through yesterday, like we've got, the guilt and shame part of the workshop was, fuck, how do I explain that, man? Like, fuck, it was moving. It was scary as fuck, like with some of the stuff that is coming up. But it was really moving, man, on how... you know, like how what's the word? Like, I mean, you were exposed, like they gave the opportunity for us males to really lay out on the table of some of this guilt and shame that's coming up. And there wasn't really anyone that you couldn't relate to either, you know, every single person. And even though you might not have done some of their guilt and shames, but you fucking just, you felt it, man. Like you resonated with what they were going through, I guess.
Yeah, that's a really important part of the workshop. You know, every emotion that we as humans experience hold a vibrational frequency, and one of the lowest is guilt and shame, or two of the lowest, sorry. So for us to create a task around that, and the Perth men yesterday were fucking beautiful, Marky? Like, you know, some rooms show up and we always celebrate, you know, whether you show up in full or what we deem to be 50, that could be that person's 100. The Perth men yesterday showed up, bro.
Really? Yeah, so that was a good workshop, yeah?
Absolutely, bro.
Yeah.
It was really beautiful. So in that specific task, you know, the men really went there, and we all heard with our ears and felt with our, you know, bodies and hearts what was being shared. And, you know, there was so much empathy, understanding, and then you're still lovable, bro. From what you've just shared with us, you're still fucking lovable, and that's a really important part of that task.
Yeah. Yeah. I also like part of the, you know, the task of giving and receiving, man. Like, fuck, at first getting a hug, man, you know, like I got to admit, the first time, you know, when someone come up and gave me a hug, at first it feels a little bit uncomfortable. But just then when you just lean into it, and then when you get to give it back, man, like, fuck, the guy I got to go up and give a cuddle, man, it was just like, had this opportunity to say, fuck, bro, I got you. I felt like I just grabbed him, and then when you grab him, he sort of just hugs you back twice as hard, and fuck, man, it was wicked. And I just felt like having that opportunity to show a random person that you've never spoken to, and given the opportunity to show them, bro, you are seen, you are loved, and I've got your back. And the reason why I say that is because a lot of people that are either going through drug problems or relationship problems, that they feel quite isolated and they don't have anyone to turn to. And sometimes the people that they do have to turn to aren't the right people for them, you know, might lead them back into drugs or give them the wrong direction. But the opportunity to reach out, there's so many random people out there where you can actually reach out to, you know, to get that comfort or to be seen, I guess.
I love that you brought that up, because we actually took that out at the start of the day. That wasn't going to be part of the workshop. But then, as Wa was saying, the way all you men lent in, it was needed. Especially with the guilt and shame circle, where it went and how quick it went there. Everyone there was there for the right reason. And with the energy that everyone shifted through in that moment, that's where we were like, no, we need to bring this in now. And it worked out beautifully.
Yeah.
And obviously to receive that love after you shared what you've just shared, which is some things that some people would never even know about you, to be able to receive that love and show that you're still lovable is huge.
Yeah. Yeah, it was massive, man, for that part. And because I think that's part of the problem, like when we go back to talking about suicide, that 60-second gap, you know, there are people out there, man, you know, like, I mean, I say it all the time, like, fucking just get hold of me, man, through this podcast, or anyone else that's been on this podcast. I'm sure if they don't fucking know you, man, get hold of them. I know that, you know, and I'm sure you guys will be exactly the same, man. Just fucking let me know, man. We are here for you. You don't have to be a good friend to reach out.
Yeah, bro, and that's the importance of normalising the work that we're all doing and the message that we're sharing with the world, because and also self-empowerment, because in that 60-second gap or whatever it might be for someone when they're going through that experience, they reach out and that person doesn't respond to them.
Yeah, okay,
So it's like, am I empowered enough internally to hold myself through that, and then, you know, when the support is there, I'm open to receiving it. So, you know, it's two parts of that, I believe. You know, yes, normalising that it's strong to ask for support, and then two, self-empowerment, because there will be times that I need to navigate things myself, and there is, unfortunately, in that exact moment, no support for me. So I get to hold myself.
And when you're in that moment, man, we spoke about the 3 things that you write down. You know, I mean, if you're in that moment, you really got to have a look at what your day's made up of, or your week. And you got us to write down the 3 things. So maybe, I don't know, do we talk about, if, you know, someone's just taking some notes now on wanting to just have a quick snapshot at their life and on how they can, you know, change a few things around. Those, writing those 3 notes down meant a lot, man. It showed a lot of your distractions and what you're putting your energy to.
Yeah, so we can even do it right now. For the people that are listening, we'll give a 10-second, you know, space of silence, you know, and a question that I'll ponder to you is, you know, what's most important to you in your life right now? 1 being the most important, 2 being the second, and 3 being the third. Beautiful, and I'm sure most people would have reflected quickly on, oh, that's important, that's important, that's important. And now what I'd like to ask you is, are you on that list? And if you're not, and let's say you might be at 4th, everything that's above that, 1, 2 and 3 is getting the 4th best version of you. So a lot of people will have children or, you know, family. And if you're at 3rd or 4th, your children and your family are getting the 3rd or 2nd or even 4th best version of you. When that was presented to me many years ago, where I was down at 10th or 11th, you know, my children were at number 1. And guess what? My children were getting the 10th best version of their dad. What the world was seeing, they were getting the best version. But behind closed doors, they were getting the frustrated dad who was exhausted, you know, and the raised voice and the swear words. So it's important that we, you know, at least play in the space of what would life look like and feel like if I placed myself at the top of that list and I'm the most important. Because then my amazing children and all my friends and loved ones receive that version of me.
Yeah, and you talked about, like, you know, you got to fill your own cup, because what's overflowing from that is what everyone gets. Or, yeah,
it's that concept, you know, if I'm at number 1 and I'm doing all the things and lighting my soul up, there will eventually be overflow. And then my children and my workspace and all the things below me receive that overflow. There's longevity in that. Where there's no longevity is when they're just receiving the fumes, because eventually those fumes run out. And that's when they start to get the frustration, the overwhelmed version of me, which is not the best version of myself.
Yeah. And I mean, I like that message of how I like that message, man, because a lot of us males, we feel we've got to put our work first or our the children first, and we don't take that time out for ourselves. But it's also a guilt thing too, man. It's also like, well, who the fuck are you to put yourself as number one? I mean, that does happen. I know it happens with me a lot, I guess even just talking about being on a podcast in front of a camera, I had all this gear probably 4 months before I even done my first podcast, maybe even longer. And the biggest process is like, who the fuck are you to jump on a mic and in front of a camera and talk about mental health? Fucking you still do that, or you've done this, or fucking back then you done that, or, whatever it may be. And I feel sometimes as males, that's what goes on in our everyday life, until you just go, fuck it, man. Like, I am putting myself first, or I'm putting this podcast first, yeah.
But the beauty in that is you're able to speak into your experiences and where you're at in life right now. Like, I'd be lying if I said I wouldn't go through these things. I go through it every day. But the difference is now I do have the awareness to understand it and the support around me to be able to navigate through it, like yourself right now.
Yeah, yeah.
And a lot of men, struggle to put themselves first, because even as far back as, the little boy is taught, when you're a man, you're the provider and the protector. And what comes with the provider and the protector is everyone comes first before me. So it's conditioned into our subconscious mind, and that's why we find it so difficult to do the opposite of that, because remember, our subconscious mind runs like a machine, and it runs automatically.
So what does a man called Wa do for his day-to-day life, bro? Like, what fills your cup, bro? Like, what does a typical day, week look like for you, bro?
I'm a morning person, bro.
Yeah.
So very early hours of the morning, well before the sun comes up. And I started practicing that many years ago because I was a single father for most of my children's life. And life was pretty hectic, full-time job, 3 very young children. I learnt that I had to get up at 4 a.m. to just have some time to myself. So I learnt that well back then, and it's something that I still love to do today. I'm very big on, the small things like breathing, meditation, affirmations, all the stuff you see on social media. So I don't want to preach that, everyone knows that. And then my physical health is where I lay the benchmark for everything in my life. If my physical health is on, everything else in my life is on. And when it's off, bro, my mates know now. They're like, oh, he's not he's not training. I'm usually a fucking grumpy cunt.
Yeah.
I'm snappy at my children, not the best partner. And when I come back to what's true for me and what lights my soul up, really focusing on my physical health, everything else falls well into play, and I'm vibrating at a high frequency, therefore the best version of me.
Yeah. And what does your physical health look like, man? Like, what do you do to?
Yeah, I train 60 minutes every single morning in the gym, bro.
Yep.
And then 5 nights a week I get to boxing.
Yep.
And I box because I enjoy it, but I ultimately begun boxing, and I'm back doing it because my children do it, and it's my time to connect with them.
Yeah, cool. Yeah. Fuck, I'm trying to get my son into the boxing. He's still a little bit too young, but well, no, he's not really. He's basketball mad, bro. Yeah. So I've learned all basketball.
Yes.
I mean, I played a little bit when I was younger and things like that, but yeah, he's opened up the whole basketball world to me, and I'm starting to enjoy that. Getting to some Wildcat games and starting to watch NBA again and follow all the teams. And he's got it's just costing me an arm and a leg with the basketball collection, right? He's got fucking heaps going on there. Yeah, man. Did we talk about being late?
We did.
Or was that before the podcast? Or no. What else have we got here, man? Hey, yeah. So I guess I wanted to ask this to you, because you've said that you've had a couple of relationships and things like that. When you grow as a male, right? So like I find that you. How am I going to explain this right, man? And I'm sure, Mark, you can add to it as well. But So you're in a toxic relationship. Well, you're in a young relationship, especially when you start young, you know, and you come from a typical shit background where you haven't seen what a family looks like or a relationship or a good father for that matter. And obviously at a young age, man, you know, the relationship's going to go sour at some point, I guess, especially if the females also come from a similar sort of background. And I'm not saying all relationships go like that, but they can go very toxic. And then when you add kids into the mix as well, things can get hard and, you know. But then you have the separation and the male goes away and works on himself, like in your case. But it's either the ex-missus that's the mother of your children, and sometimes it can be your own family and friends and things. They can't get to over the fact that you have changed, that you have woken up, that you are learning. Sometimes it's hard to, and I'm experiencing this as well, like you want to sort of be that good partner again, but you've lost the trust to some people, you know, if it's either been drug addiction or, you know, even just, you know, if you're yelling or whatever it may be, even if you're being physically violent or whatever it might be. Is there a process to, I guess, trying to reclaim back old relationships, or not to get back with the missus or reclaim, I guess, your family? I'm talking not relationships. I'm just talking people that mean something to you, still going to play a part in your life, to sort of, you know, get them to understand that this is the new you.
See, I love you actually ask that, because I have been through that. And there is still certain points at time where my kid's mother will still think that I'm the person that I was, and I just tried to provide that safety for her, and I do understand her, and we do have a lot of conversations around it, but I just make sure I stay in my truth, and I don't let myself fall back into those old patterns, but I can see them now and understand them, and then I'm able to have those conversations with her. And yes, it did take a long time for her to see differently of me, but I feel the more that I lent into that was more lessons for me to learn, and every time something would arise, it was a beautiful teaching or something more that I had to understand, and it was my choice whether I lent into that or whether I fell back into old patterning.
Sorry, you go. I will add to that, and it's just consistency of this new version of you, because you were actually super consistent of that old version of you, so therefore there's validity in what that person sees. Yes, they are holding to an old version of yourself, but it's now your responsibility to hold consistency in this new version, as opposed to when they're holding you to that old version, you then fall back to that old version. Therefore, you're creating more validity of that old version of yourself.
Yeah. When I went to drug and alcohol men's group counselling, they reckon like 80% of men that relapse is because they're just not accepted back into their environment again, you know.
And if that's the case, then I'd see that as a problem and go, okay, cool. How do we teach discernment? How do we teach men to separate themselves from a person's story to their story? Because when I'm back in my story and knowing this new version of myself so fucking well, I'm able to separate and then hold them in that old version until they're able to come across and meet this new version of me.
And if I can add to that as well, it's like you got to trust in yourself, man, that you are doing the work and you are changing. And because I know, and sometimes I go through it myself more, but like right at the beginning stages, I used to question myself, like, fuck, are you for real, man? Or have you changed? You know, and also like, I mean, we talk, you know, and we could talk about this as well, like it's like your healthy ego and your negative ego, and it's that negative ego still going, nah, man, I reckon you can still fucking go down that avenue, you haven't changed at all, or, you know, just some of these. And I think just trusting in the fact that, no, this is the new me, and I'm accepting it.
And not only that, it's a beautiful moment for you to sit there and reflect, and you can understand where you were and where you are now, and you can see the steps that you have taken to get to where you are.
Yeah,
so it's another lovely reminder that you can actually see in yourself and remember your worth.
Yeah.
Can I just say you're speaking really well, Mark? And I'm only saying that because our bro's got, which I used to, well, I've had to navigate myself, is, you know, speaking in front of cameras, and I've just been watching, I was actually in awe. I was like, fuck, my bro speaks well. He's the man.
I've been thinking the same thing the whole time as well. But how was that? And even yesterday at the event, what was his name? oh no, we can't. Well,
Yeah.
I won't mention his name, but we know who we're talking of. And there's two
Yeah.
guys that come into mind, and both of them ended up being like the best speakers out of the
Straight
whole
up, bro.
crew.
But again, it's the stories that we hold
Yeah.
and place upon ourselves. Like, fuck, I'm looking at my bro and hearing
Yeah.
like, fuck, the bro is
But
the
once
man.
again, as we were saying earlier, safety and comfortability, like comfortable. I feel comfortable and safe right now.
Yeah,
And you're allowing me to rewrite that story that I have, and I couldn't even tell you where that come from.
fuck yeah. Yeah, wicked, bro. We get this a lot on this podcast. It's like a little bit of a therapy session within ourselves.
Yeah.
And no, that's wicked, bro. But yeah, for sure, man. Like you've fucking glad you jumped on.
Cheers, bro.
Yeah, especially what you've shared, bro. I mean, you opened up with a good story, man, and you know, and I think that's a good part again. And you boys mentioned it as well. You know, being authentic on here and. Yeah.
And as you said, bro, like a lot of us try to run away from our story, and I know I did for a long time. I'd hide parts of my life and where I was and what I was at, but it is my story, and it is where I was, and it is to how I got here.
So, is this a full-time thing for you boys?
So it's a full-time thing for me. I
Yep.
do men full-time, and I have for the past 2.5 years now.
Yep.
So I'm really proud of the fact that I was able to step outside of the normal and create a space where it's my fucking passion and my purpose, and allow myself to be in this every moment of every single day.
Yeah. And what does your day today look like, man?
I've got my own concrete cutting company.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Very successful.
Very successful.
Yeah.
But I love this because I love being around the group that I'm involved with, and I love sharing the word, because even walking in these rooms, a lot of people, I won't say look at us, but think we're something different. Whereas we all come from where you are now. And I am so authentic with sharing that and helping people see that, to see the other side of what you can be. And I love it. I really love going to it and doing it, being a part of it and spreading the word.
Yeah. Are you looking at to being a full-time thing? Oh, I guess if you've got a pretty successful business, yeah.
No, that's still my goal.
Still on the cards.
Yep,
Yeah.
that's still my goal.
Yeah.
There's a whole group of us, bro. So I might sometimes look like I'm at the forefront of everything, but there's a whole team behind the Amen movement, bro. We've got our sis over here, Mel, sitting with us, who travels very frequently with us around Australia and New Zealand. There's people in all different cities over in New Zealand as well that are the backbone of this movement. There's fucking zero chance that I could do this by myself.
Yep.
People will talk about, the founders of Men Movement. But the founders of Men Movement were a group of about 50 men. We had a conversation in my shed. It was solidified on one day, and the next day there was 50 men on one Zoom call. And
Yeah,
it was
right.
those men that were the founders of Amend.
Yeah. And was that in New Zealand or?
I was here in Australia.
Okay. Yep.
So, a little group of us had a conversation. It was solidified. We sent a message out, and the next day we had a Zoom call with 50 men on it. And it was in that Zoom call that we came out with the name Amend.
Nice. And so, because I mean, because it looks like it's really like Kiwi based, a lot of it. Is there a difference between what you do over there in a workshop to over here in Australia?
Same practices, same tasks, same everything. There's a lot more heavy. My experience, it's a lot more heavy energy in New Zealand. There's a lot more walls to break down, so we're going to be a little bit more patient, a little bit more nurturing, as opposed to a bit more direct here in Australia. And we do base a lot of what we do on the Māori culture, because a lot of us who founded this movement are from that culture. And it's also something that we're really mindful of and can separate us from other cultures, and something we're navigating right now, because we want to be all-inclusive to people in general.
Fuck yeah. Because you've done like a lot of with the mongrel mob and things like that, eh?
But that was a blessing, man.
Yeah.
Like, I grew up around gangs.
Yeah.
Like, it's not uncommon for me to be around men with patches on their backs. And I remember when we first started this, I had 3 goals that I wrote down. And one was to take this work home back to where I grew up. And that was big for me because I had so much trauma. I had so many stories that were non-serving me regarding where I grew up. The second one was to go into jails and do this work, which we've done and doing.
Yeah, right.
And the third one was to bring this work to the gangs, and we've done it. So the third one was with the mongrel mob, and when we did that, upon reflection, days after that, I sat there and I was like, I'm so fucking proud of the energy that I'm emitting out, that the Amen family is emitting out, because what we are desiring is now coming into our reality, and we'll continue to manifest what we want to see in this world.
Fuck yeah. Fuck, I'm excited to see what more. I'd like to see you over in Perth more, man.
Yeah, well, yesterday was on our second time. We came here last year, through the help of G'd Up. And that was really cool, where we met a lot of the brothers who are now our actual brothers. We spend time with them a lot and we speak to them daily. So to come back a second time was really cool, and we just want to help build a community here, because let's be honest, the workshops are, they're transformative and they're amazing, but that's not where the work is. That's simply awareness. The work is on daily practices. So we don't live here. There needs to be a community built so that the brothers here and the sisters here can support one another on a daily basis, because that's where the true work is.
Yeah. I mean, Jake and I think Al and Graydon, we'll had a bit of a discussion of it'd be pretty cool to catch up in another couple of weeks and go for a walk around the river and try and reach out to. But I met some amazing people yesterday. So it would be good to have that the reconnect, through it, because I think there's some good friendships that you can build, man. And yeah.
Absolutely, bro. I've got a lot of friends, and I look around now, bro. I only have friends who are in the work. Yeah. And that's because those friends vibrate on the frequency that I'm vibrating at, and we get to amplify our energy together. And, I've heard and I've seen and I've observed, those workshops create a connection, and there's still men and women today that are now best friends from that one-day workshop. Yeah. So Liam, one of the brothers who were holding space yesterday, he's in the process of creating that catch-up that you're talking about, so that everyone that was at the workshop yesterday can catch up in a few weeks. Yeah.
Fuck, all the facilitators were awesome yesterday, man. And again, that was just creating the safe place, I mean, fuck, if anyone had walked in that didn't know what was going on when we're all laying on the ground screaming and fucking seen all these tattooed big bulky men walking around, they were going, what the fuck is going on there, eh?
So often we walk into rooms, and it even happened yesterday. There was 5 of us that walked into the room, and the dude that opened the door for us was a bit like hesitant, and I was like, gee, it's like me walking in with 4 gang members. Because it does look like there's always big dudes, tattoos all over them. But we actually love that, because, we're trying to normalise this work for men. And I believe that there's big impact when men that look like that and embody energy like they do, they become big permission slips for a lot of other men.
Yeah. I'm learning a lot about the masculine at the moment. And I think us males need to start to go back to a little bit, to understand a little bit more, man, especially, we spoke about that as well, it's like, what was it, man? You said like 80% of people that get castrated come from
single mother homes.
A single mother home. And us males, and this is why I love your work, and this has been a big, massive reason why I'm doing this podcast, is to create better men, better partners, better fathers, who will benefit from it, and taking some responsibility as well, I guess.
Yeah. We talk about masculine men, bro, and there's so many rabbit holes, I like to use that word, we can go down. And one big one is, that I'm seeing is, Mark talked about social media. Men are being like shut down for being strong nowadays. Like it's like, oh, you can't be strong, and then you become this, they label you with this word toxic. So men are shying away from being strong men now, which are actually pushing them into feminine energy. And when a man's pressed into his feminine energy, he's not in his true essence. So let's just say he becomes unhappy. And what that does for women who are in their lives is pushes them more into their masculine energy. So we've now got 2 humans that are trying to connect, in a relationship, for example, and then raise children and energies that are not their true essence. That's going to cause chaos. Yeah. So it's sending us, and it's important, like you just said, that we men, bring awareness to our beings so that we can come back to what's true for me and what's a strong man, as opposed to what all this noise outside of myself is telling me.
Yeah. I'm only just really learning even more about it at the moment. I'm reading a book called, I've just finished a book called The Life of a Superior Man.
The Way of the Superior Man. I knew you were going to mention that.
I knew that. We were talking about that book a couple of days ago.
On the
completely
plane on the
blew
way
my
over
mind.
here, I opened it and I was saying every time I pick up that book, wherever I open that book, that's exactly where I'm at in my life.
Yeah.
And I opened the book and what's it at? Masculine.
Yeah.
Bringing it back into the relationship, which is something I'm navigating through right now. And
Yeah.
I knew as soon as you said it, I knew you were going to bring that book up.
Yeah. Hey, so I finished that book. Can you guys recommend a book to... I listen to Audible. I can't read for shit.
Bro, I would say read that book 10 times.
Yeah.
Like, no word of a lie. I've read it multiple times, and every single time I read it, I learn something new. I guess that's like with anything in life. The more you do it, the more you see, because you're expanding your own consciousness. So that book is the best. And there's one other one called The Untethered Soul.
But I love how you say you can't read for shit, so maybe you should.
Read.
Yeah.
Oh,
Get that book, read it, because it's going to slow you down. Like we're talking about slowing down, right? Walking at a fast pace. It's going to slow you down. It's going to make you be present and make you focus.
Yeah. Yeah. I will do that.
And fuck you.
Fuck, I liked having you on here.
But now you can get the fuck off.
Fucking hell. But yeah, I couldn't read or write. Like I'd done fuck all schooling in New Zealand, man. And when I went into business, I couldn't even read or write. I couldn't even do an email. So for me, listening to Audible is more me being able to process it better and get through information quicker, I guess, because I'm hungry to learn. I've always been that way, hungry to learn, but even more so now. So when I actually read a book, it's like I can't process it. Well, I struggle to process it, I guess, yeah.
I'm the same, and that's why I said go back and read it over and over and over again.
Yeah.
Bro, sometimes I'll read the same chapter 4 times.
Yeah.
Even if you continue your audibles, and then just for 5 minutes each day, start practicing reading, because it's not even going to be about the reading. It's in that 5 minutes. What else do you get to learn about yourself?
All right.
Now you can both get off.
Sweet. What else we got, man? I mean, I've gone through all my notes, really. I guess, is anything that, to those who are listening, anything that we haven't touched on, man, that you think might be important to...
Yeah. There's 2 things that were coming up for me just through conversations that we had today in this podcast. And the first one is, yes, workshops, retreats, all the glitz and glamour that social media might show us are transformative, but it's actually what happens after that that is more transformative or will actually transform your life. I see it happen so frequently. People will just go to workshop after workshop or read book after book or podcast after podcast, and they do fuck all with what they've learned. Knowledge is not power. Knowledge coupled with action is power. So to anyone listening who is in workshops or learning new things in whatever way they are, action that knowledge, and that's where your life will be transformed.
Yeah, beautiful, bro. I like that. It resonates with me as well. And I guess it goes back to, fuck it, man, you've just witnessed a weak spot, man, in reading. So, yeah, practice it, man. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, brother.
And what was the second thing? Well, was that all in...
Well, that was the 2 things. The workshops are transformative, and then, but it's actually the day-to-day practices, and then we must action that. Like knowledge is not power. A lot of people say, knowledge is power. No, it's not, because if you do fuck all with it,
Yeah, true.
it's not powerful at all.
Yeah, man.
I'm good with that one.
Yeah. So we'll, like, on these podcasts, I'll grab all your details, bro. Amend. A lot of people know who Amend is, but, we'll have your details on my website. So those who have got this far into the podcast, man, and want to know more about these boys, yeah, man, they can reach you on there. It'd be fucking awesome to have you back in Perth.
Speaking to Al,
Yeah.
Al's a big part of, decisions that get made here in Perth regarding Amend.
Yeah.
And I think end of February next year we'll be
Yeah.
back. So it'll be fucking cool to have, a room of many men that can then take whatever they learn home back to their families.
Yeah, for sure, man. And on behalf of everyone that went to that event yesterday, fucking thank you, boys, eh? It meant a lot. It meant a lot to me, and it meant a lot to everyone else that I saw. I mean, you touched so many people, man. A lot of work got done. So thank you, man. And thanks for coming on board to Fucking Real. It was an absolute honour to have you both here, man. Especially you, Mark, mate. You go against
Thank you, brother. Enjoyed it. And look, fuck, if you're open to it, would love to jump back on in February. We'll be back here for the next week.
100%, bro. Yeah, let's make it happen.
Let's do it.
Cool.
Sounds good.
Awesome.
Me.